10 WWE legends who absolutely hated Demolition, and the reasons are just wild. From shocking betrayals to real-life injuries, these stories have everything. So let's dive in and see what really went down. 1. Strike Force. The rivalry between Demolition and Strike Force was one of the most defining tag team feuds of the late 1980s, marking the moment when the unstoppable rise of Demolition truly began. Strike Force, made up of Tito Santana and Rick Martel, were everything fans loved about tag team wrestling. Athletic, flashy, and incredibly skilled. Demolition, on the other hand, were their complete opposites. Dark, intimidating, and brutal, with their face paint, black leather gear, and destructive style. When these two teams collided, it was pure chaos and storytelling at its best. Their feud started in late 1987, when Demolition, Axe, and Smash were beginning to dominate the WWF Tag Team division. Managed by Mr. Fuji, they had already established themselves as a dangerous duo, destroying almost every team that stood in their way. Strike Force, meanwhile, were the reigning tag team champions after defeating the Hart Foundation. They were popular, energetic, and carried themselves as fighting champions. Naturally, that made them the perfect targets for Demolition. The rivalry built over several months, with Demolition constantly ambushing Strike Force and showing no respect for the rules. Strike Force relied on teamwork, speed, and technical skill, while Demolition used raw power and intimidation. The tension reached its peak at WrestleMania 4 in March 1988, where Demolition challenged Strike Force for the WWF Tag Team Championship. That match ended up being one of the most memorable moments in tag team wrestling history. During the bout, Demolition used their typical brutal tactics, isolating Rick Martel and wearing him down. Then came the turning point. While the referee was distracted, Mr. Fuji handed Axe his steel mask, which he used to knock Martel out cold. Smash then pinned Santana to win the belts, giving Demolition their first WWF Tag Team Championship. To explain Martel's absence afterward, the storyline claimed he suffered a serious neck injury from that masked shot, taking him out of action for months. When Martel finally returned, he was noticeably colder and more frustrated, which later played into his heel turn in the breakup of Strike Force. In a way, Demolition didn't just take their titles, they broke the team's bond. 2. The Powers of Pain. It started in 1988 when the Powers of Pain, the Warlord and the Barbarian, made their debut. They were massive, sculpted powerhouses, very similar to Demolition in look and style. Naturally, comparisons started flying immediately. The WWF didn't waste time capitalizing on it either. They began teasing a dream clash between the two dominant duos, and fans were excited to see who the true kings of the tag team division were. At the time, Demolition, Axe, and Smash were still heels managed by Mr. Fuji. But something strange started happening. The crowd began cheering for Demolition despite their villainous image. They were just too cool, too intimidating, and too entertaining to boo. Meanwhile, the Powers of Pain were brought in as babyfaces, the supposed good guys who would challenge Demolition's dominance. Their first few encounters were intense, built around mutual respect but growing tension. Both teams were evenly matched, and fans could sense that something was about to explode. That explosion came at Survivor Series 1988. During the big tag team elimination match, the shocking twist happened. Mr. Fuji suddenly betrayed Demolition, tripping Smash and costing them the match. Then, in a shocking move, Fuji aligned himself with the Powers of Pain, turning them heel and leaving Demolition as stunned as everyone watching. That betrayal completely flipped the dynamic. Demolition were now the fan favorites, and the Powers of Pain, under Fuji's guidance, became the villains. What followed were months of brutal matches, hard-hitting brawls, steel cage fights, and wild tag team showdowns. The feud carried through WrestleMania 5, where Demolition defended their titles successfully against the Powers of Pain and Fuji in a handicap match, finally getting their revenge. 3. The Brain Busters. The feud began in 1989 when the Brain Busters made their way to the WWF after leaving the NWA, where they had already built a reputation as one of the best technical tag teams in the world. They immediately targeted Demolition, who at that point had been the WWF Tag Team Champions for over a year, a record-breaking reign that seemed unbeatable. Demolition had steamrolled through everyone, but Anderson and Blanchard were a different kind of threat. They weren't going to outmuscle Demolition. They were going to outsmart them. With Heenan in their corner, the Brainbusters used every trick in the book, distractions, quick tags, and well-timed double teams, to frustrate Demolition. Their matches were a masterclass in storytelling. Demolition's brute strength constantly clashing with the Brainbusters' technical brilliance. Fans loved the dynamic because it was so different from Demolition's usual feuds against other big men. The turning point came on Saturday night's main event in July 1989, when the Brainbusters finally defeated Demolition to capture the WWF Tag Team Championships. Of course, the victory didn't come clean. Heenan's interference and Anderson's perfectly timed tactics helped seal the win. That loss ended Demolition's historic 478-day title reign, a record that stood as one of the longest in WWE history for decades. After losing the belts, Demolition went on a mission for revenge. The two teams clashed repeatedly throughout the rest of 1989, delivering some of the most intense and well-executed tag matches of the era. Each encounter felt like a chess match. Strength versus strategy, chaos versus control. Their rivalry finally wound down after Demolition regained momentum, and the Brainbusters eventually left the WWF. Still, the feud left a lasting mark. It proved that Demolition could hold their own against even the most technical teams, and showed that the Brainbusters, though smaller in size, were absolute masters of their craft. 4. The Colossal Connection. What made this rivalry stand out wasn't just the size and strength of the men involved, but also the emotional weight behind it, especially with Andre the Giant nearing the end of his in-ring career. The Colossal Connection was a new powerhouse team formed in late 1989, consisting of Andre the Giant and Haku, both members of Bobby the Brain, Heenan's infamous Heenan family. Heenan's goal was clear. He wanted his stable to dominate every division, and Demolition's position as two-time WWF Tag Team Champions made them the perfect target. At that time, Demolition, Axe and Smash were fan favorites, known for their face paint, power moves, and unmatched chemistry. They had already fought through the best teams the company had to offer, but the Colossal Connection posed a completely different kind of threat. Andre may have been past his physical prime due to his worsening health, but his size and presence were still unmatched. Haku, meanwhile, was one of the toughest men in the business, known for his raw strength and fighting ability. Together, they became a dangerous combination of brute force and experience. With Heenan pulling the strings at ringside, they immediately became a nightmare for Demolition. Their rivalry built quickly toward the end of 1989. On December 30th, during a TV taping for Saturday night's main event, the Colossal Connection defeated Demolition to capture the WWF Tag Team titles. The match saw Andre and Haku take advantage of constant distractions and Heenan's interference, leaving Demolition furious and determined to get their gold back. That set the stage for WrestleMania 6 in April 1990, the big rematch and one of the most emotional moments of the entire feud. In front of a massive crowd in Toronto's Sky Dome, Demolition faced the Colossal Connection for the championships. This time the roles reversed. It was Andre who became the weak link. Demolition used smart teamwork to isolate Haku, eventually hitting their signature Demolition Decapitation to reclaim the titles and become three-time WWF Tag Team Champions. After the match, Heenan lost his temper and publicly berated Andre for the loss. In a moment that shocked everyone, Andre finally turned on Heenan, ending his long partnership with the villainous manager. That marked the official end of both the Colossal Connection and Andre's full-time wrestling career. 5. The Legion of Doom. To understand how it all built up, it's important to know that Demolition was heavily inspired by the Road Warriors, who later became the Legion of Doom in WWF. Axe and Smash were essentially the WWF's answer to Hawk and Animal, a tough, unstoppable, face-painted duo that filled the void when the original team wasn't part of the company. But when the Legion of Doom officially signed with WWF in the summer of 1990, the comparisons turned into confrontation. Suddenly, there wasn't room for two powerhouse tag teams that looked and acted so much alike. At this point, Demolition had started showing a darker side. Axe's health issues were becoming noticeable, so WWF brought in Crush as a third member, turning the team into a trio that could rotate depending on who was available. However, this addition also signaled the beginning of their heel turn. Fans began cheering more for the Legion of Doom, whose genuine dominance and charisma made them instant favorites. The tension between the teams began almost immediately after LOD's debut. Demolition, once adored by the fans, started acting more vicious and jealous. They attacked LOD during interviews and matches, claiming they were the originals and that Hawk and Animal were just trying to steal their spotlight. The Legion of Doom, never ones to back down, fired right back, calling Demolition copycats and challenging them to prove who the real powerhouse team was. Throughout late 1990, the feud burned hot with explosive tag matches and chaotic brawls, often ending in disqualifications or interference. Demolition's new heel persona made the dynamic even better. The fans were now fully behind the Legion of Doom, who stood as the unstoppable newcomers challenging the once feared Demolition. Though the rivalry never got the long, decisive pay-per-view blow-off fans hoped for, it still left a huge mark. Behind the scenes, the storyline was somewhat rushed due to Axe's health issues, which led to him quietly leaving the group. But in the eyes of the fans, the feud had already delivered what they wanted. Two of the most dominant, destructive tag teams of all time finally colliding. And that wraps up today's video. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and drop a comment below. We'll catch you all in the next one.